We are live on friggin' YouTube. All right, guys. Awesome. Let me get my stuff together here. So today we're going to be hosting Antony Cummins. All right, guys, I'm super stoked about this. So let me turn down this music. Guys, I'm super stoked about this. We're going to be hanging out today with Antony Cummins. Antony is a historian and researcher, and he is a samurai ninjutsu expert. All right, this guy is like freaking serious when it comes to tactics and history of ninjutsu and everything else like that. So what we're going to do is we have a couple of minutes before he comes on. Send him the Zoom invite, so we're standing by for his communications. I'm going to do what I usually do and take like 2 seconds here and get my stuff together. My notes are going to be finished, and then when he comes on, we'll come back in. We'll introduce him. And guys, I'm stoked about this because this is going to be fun. All right, yeah, I've been watching his channel for some time now, and just for your guys' reference, let me pull up his channel on here. It is Samurai and Ninja History. All right, so the guy's dope. He's got 35,000 subscribers, which he honestly probably deserves more. Samurai and Ninja History. I mean, the stuff this guy talks about, like bar none, is great. So I highly recommend his channel. I went on a tear for a while where I was watching his channel like every single day, and great videos. So let me get my stuff together. I'm gonna cover this up so that you're not blinded by my radiant beauty while I get everything else together, and we'll come right back on to the answer. Antony, what's going on, man? Let me get this music off of here. Awesome. How are you, sir?
I'm good. How is life?
It's crazy, but we're living it, you know?
Where are you at the minute?
I am in the United States at the minute. I'm on the West Coast, so
yeah,
nice and toasty warm out here. I'm loving life. I assume you're in gray, foggy old England.
Well, technically I'm not. I'm actually in Wales.
Okay.
So, which is obviously we're all in Great Britain, but Americans don't tend to get this. I am English. Yes, I'm from England, but I moved to Wales, which is literally there's no border. You just walk across the street and you're in Wales. You know what I mean? But it's full of Welsh people who don't really like the English. So, you know, they look.
I've traveled to England for a little while. I did my surveillance training over in North Yorkshire, which I don't know how close to Wales that is, but all I know about the Welsh people is they're supposed to speak a funny language and there's some beef between you guys.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Basically, the Welsh speak Welsh. They're the original inhabitants of the UK.
Oh, okay.
So what happened was it was like 1,300 years ago. The Saxons came over and battered them and put them in Wales. And then basically they've never forgiven us since. It's only been 1,300 years, but they still hate the English.
Well, that seems to be the way things go out there. And your end of the world is you guys have a long memory. I think it's freaking hilarious how the French and the English are still beefing, and you guys as navies still hate each other after all this time.
That's only 500 or 600 years old. That argument. So the Welsh argument is much older, and the Scottish one is about the middle of that. So your Welsh are the oldest argument, Scottish hate us middle, and the French are like the new haters.
When I was over in London town, man, I was like blown away by how old stuff was. And I was talking with someone and they were like, yeah, like you guys in the States, like your oldest building is like 300 to 400 years old. That's like new construction to us.
Well, this house is nearly 200 years old.
Wow. Wow.
And I'm in a little Welsh cottage and it's freezing.
It looks pretty awesome though, man. It looks almost like we have over here. They call them castitas, and they're like little Mexican houses.
Right.
And it looks like one of those in the background.
Yeah, it's basically it's old fires on.
Oh, that's cool.
Don't work and all that. The chimney goes up. So yeah, I've shut the curtain because I've got you guys on sort of. So hopefully nobody will knock on the door. We're all right. We're not going to be live, are we?
We are live right now.
Oh, right. Okay, right then.
You know. Sorry, I probably should have had Jen communicate that to you in the email. That was my fault. So
no, normally with podcasts, what happens is they come on, they do that, they give you a chat, and then they say later, let's do it then, let's go. And that, but podcasters never say if it's live or not. You have to ask all these questions beforehand.
Yeah, I know.
I've been on the BBC before now, live worldwide, and not even known it, thinking, all right, they're going to lead me in. And they were like, oh, and thanks for that. Antony Cummins, bye. I was like, what?
Yeah, no,
I'm live.
I'm glad you have media experience, man, because again, my fault. Like, I should have told you could have honestly said some politically incorrect stuff and been like,
totally.
Yeah, no.
What, like we hate the Welsh and the French and the English and the Scottish? No,
yeah, but that's common knowledge. So.
Let me open the door just to get the Wi-Fi. All right, it might struggle a bit.
So, guys, I want to give you a quick background on Antony for those of you guys who aren't currently following Samurai and Ninja history. This is like one of my favorite pages. I went on a tear, as I said a moment ago, where I was watching like nothing but Antony's videos. I mean, as a guy who's been interested in ninja history and tradecraft and samurai stuff for like all of my life. I mean, this channel is like, you guys need to check him out. But Antony is an author and historical researcher who focus on bringing the world's attention to the dramatic and sophisticated realm of Japanese medieval warrior, with the conclusion of helping to change perspectives on historical truths that lie behind the story of the samurai and the infamous ninja. His aim is basically to heighten the awareness of the interesting and sometimes lost sections of Japanese history that make for really awesome reading experiences. Now, Antony is also an author as well as being a historian. So you got a lot of books, man. But some of them that I found kind of jumped out at me was The Ultimate Art of War, a step-by-step illustrated guide to Sun Tzu's teaching, and then How to Become a Modern Samurai. So 10 steps to finding your power and achieving your success. Can you tell us a little bit, and I want to jump more into your background, but just off the bat, can you tell us a little bit more about this one, which is How to Become a Modern Samurai? Because that fascinates me.
So basically, everybody loves the samurai. Everybody watching this and the people love samurai. And what annoyed me is most of what we know about the samurai is just from movies. It's from really bad documentaries, really polished up. And it annoyed me because there is some Aikido practitioners all follow the way of the samurai. You've got your Kenjutsu people, all your samurai people, like, we want to follow the way of the warrior. Even ex-military people follow samurai. But if you ask them, what did the samurai historically do? They won't be able to tell you, but they all follow the way of the samurai, but they've no idea. So what I did with that is, because I had so much information, I stripped it down to its basic premise and said, what would a samurai do as a framework? A real historical samurai. And then I just made it into that book saying, this is actually how it would be done.
So with the samurai, man, they were obviously, I don't want to say mercenaries, but they were warriors for the shogun, for their lord, right? Kind of like a medieval knight. And they would have followed something called the Bushido, but that actually wasn't, if I'm correct, that wasn't written by a samurai. That was written by a Western dude, right?
Well, no. So Bushido is basically, Bushi is samurai. So in the original days, the word Bushi was warrior and samurai was servant. But what happened is the servants became the warriors in the end. So the word Bushi and samurai became intermixed later on. So it's the same thing then. So, and do, like karate do or aikido, is the way of. So it's the way of the warrior, basically. Nobody wrote it ever in samurai times. No one. And it was just a unified code that, well, it wasn't quite unified, but it was a general code that people understood, you got to. And the word Bushido didn't really come about till about halfway through the samurai times. But there was a code there. But it was actually a Japanese guy. It wasn't samurai. When they came out of Samurai Times, there was a samurai who became a Christian, who spoke English, who studied in the West, who then, he was sat at a dinner table and somebody asked him, why are the Japanese so well behaved if you don't have Christianity or religions like that? So he said, well, Bushido, really, because we follow that code. So, and they said, what do you mean? So he wrote it down, but he wrote such a Disney version of it that, you know, it was a bestseller. And the president of the United States even promoted it at the time. Like, this is awesome. But actually, and that is, to be honest, I've just done my new book, is the Book of Bushido, which explains how the reality of it versus, you know, what actually happened.
So, like today, warriors, professional warriors there is a warrior's code, but it's unspoken, it's unwritten. Would it have been similar to that back in the day?
Yeah, okay. Totally, yeah. Like, but this idea that the samurai are wonderful people and they defend the weak, it's totally not true. So totally not true. So they do have a code of honor, but I'll tell you what, they'll throw it away at an instant for political gain, for power, for maneuverability. They'll be straight out there.
So now the samurai, I mean, just for historical context here, yes, like we all think of the movies, The Last Samurai. Before that, there was Ronin, right? The 31, 31 Ronin, the older movie?
47 Ronin.
47 Ronin, of course. And, we see, what honorable men and women. But as you say, man, like the historical truths about this are probably more aligned with like the Knights of Europe, right? Because those guys honor and everything, but they were like upper class. They'd spit on a peasant, like they'd probably kill a peasant without thinking about it in some cases, right? Same thing.
Basically, you're quite right. It's chivalry within their own code, within their own people, right. And how they did it. And they would not think twice about putting a peasant revolt down. So, for example, when one of the writings that we deal with is when you're being attacked by an enemy force, another enemy, and if some of the peasant villages will then start to uprise, you send out killer squads to go and kill the leaders of the peasant revolts. And they will just assassinate like local peasants and stuff like that to keep them down and keep them in check. There's
would that have been,
sorry.
No, I'm sorry. Please continue, man.
Yeah, they do all sorts, burning people alive, execution. For example, they would one army beat another army and they captured the guy. And samurai, which most people don't realize, are actually headhunters. Their culture is a headhunter culture. And the idea is you take the head and you take it and you get paid for the head depending on its status. So one samurai actually led the sort of leader of the other samurai all the way to his lord and cut his head off just before he went in. So the head was fresh. You know what I mean? You're like, that's the sort of stuff we're talking about, But they have got high civilization, so extremely high level poetry, high level art, they've got very literate and all that. Well, they very quickly pull a sword out and start hacking each other to death, for almost nothing, and take a head and then, put it and get some cash for it.
The balance between, like you say, the culture, which is magnificent, the understanding of energy and just the Renaissance man type mentality of the samurai and I think the Japanese in general. But then you balance that with the culture, quite frankly, of brutality and life is cheap in that age. When you say that these guys would go out and assassinate the leaders of these small rebellions, now would that be what we know as ninja today?
No, that was actually, so this is where it becomes a really difficult problem. This idea that ninjas are assassins is not true. It's just not true. The history of the ninja is totally different, which we'll do that in a minute. But the crux of the question here is assassin. Everybody uses the English word assassin and assassinate, and they think it just translates to something which it doesn't. So first of all, there are two types of assassination. One is anyone can assassinate. You can pick someone and go and kill them for your political gains. You don't have to be trained in any way. I could just go brick someone on the head and be like, I didn't like that politician. I've assassinated him. But then there's someone who's been trained since birth to climb walls and do poisons and all that, who's an assassin. Now, computer games and TV will have you believe that these cults are out there. But actually, the ninja was not one of them. So yes, ninjas can assassinate. Yes, they do assassinations, but no, they are not trained from birth to be assassins. That is not true. So let me get you down on ninjas. So everybody thinks the samurai v the ninja, yeah? Isn't true. Totally not true. The samurai are ninja, or ninja are part of the samurai. They are samurai themselves. So there is no sort of division between them two. So in ancient Japan, I always ask the same question. If samurai are so good, who are the enemies of samurais? And everybody says, oh, the ninja. Like, no, other samurais, the lord over there. Yeah. So everybody like, if samurai are so good, why are they fighting? You know, they're so honorable. They're actually just land grabbing. Yeah. They're like, oh, we'll have that guy's territory. We'll take that. And they do it. Now, inside of a samurai army, you get tons of different, it's exactly like the military. You get bridge builders, you get people who swim rivers, you get people who do meteorology, you get people who are expert in spears, you get logistics people, they're all there. And in one of those realms is the shinobi, the ninja. One of the samurai families will be excellent at ninjutsu. And the samurai lord at the top will have all his army and everything. And inside of it, he'll have a specific amount of samurai who are trained in the arts of the ninja. And that is basically a commando spy.
Yeah, and that's what I found so fascinating about your channel, man, is you go in there and you break down exactly like tradecraft that was written about back hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years ago, that I don't think anyone else is out there like talking about. And you literally break it down in such a way where it's like, yeah, this is exactly what they did. There's no debating it. This is what it says they did. One of the things that I was watching one of your videos, it was talking about the actual like linguistics and tradecraft of the ninjutsu. What we know is today is like ninja mind secrets or whatever. And I think I'm going to try to quote you as best as I can, is there's this one guy talking to another guy, and they said that, yeah, the ninja have this weird way of talking where they can have you like eating out of the palm of their hand if they wanted to. And that was with their ninja mind control secrets, which probably what we know is today is like NLP or like hypnosis or something like that. Am I kind of on track and tracking what you were trying to say in that video as far as that? Yes, they did have tradecraft techniques that definitely were able to like manipulate people and things like that.
So it's about really deep level conspiracy. So you're talking about multiple people being in the enemy already. So before a samurai lord goes to war, he sends his shinobi out. Now shinobi come in, obviously shinobi is the other word for ninja. If you don't know, guys, basically it's just, you know, historically, shinobi is more accurate, but famously, we all know ninja, yeah? But basically, what he'd do is he'd send out so many people beforehand. Some of these would join the enemy army. So, you know, like we get this idea, you know, Ronin, the masterless samurai. And we always have this idea that Ronin killed them. So it's not true at all. You know, it's not true. There was a time when Ronin was the way most samurai were. So a lord could afford in peacetime so much of his retinue, but he couldn't keep affording to pay out for like a massive force. So they'd save, and when a war came, they'd hire all the Ronin in who were in the countryside, and like the Ronins would go around being bodyguards or working for different lords. And if you do, you know the free, what are they called? The free companies in Europe. They are mercenaries that used to go around Europe with no lord and just hire themselves out to each lord, like 1,000 men strong. Imagine a gang of 1,000, 20, 30-year-olds going out with armor and swords and going like, do you want to hire us? And entire cities going, oh my God, shut the gate. That's what Ronin used to do. They used to go around and hire themselves out. So the inside of that movement before war, the samurai would send out his shinobi to infiltrate the enemy and get hired by them. And then, of course, he'd already have people as shopkeepers or people, you know, in different places. So then they start the rumors going. So the shopkeeper will go to the local pub and start giving rumors. Then he'll have his high-ranking samurai and then he'll start confirming rumors. And the next thing, they're manipulating people's minds of how to think. And before they know it, because they send them out a couple of years in advance, and to put them in places of trust, like information's being fed into the circulars going round that they want to put there. And it's all steeped in like, you know, far behind. And then, of course, you get things where you'll befriend. So one technique is you befriend the family of someone you want to manipulate. And what you do is you get that family to really like you, and you give them money and you're happy and you say great things about this other element. And then you start feeding them things you want, like negativity about another person. And they start relaying that to their, so like close family. Oh, don't go near him. He's rubbish. I heard it off a friend. So instead of it being direct, don't do that, where most people say, I don't trust you, but they trust their family. So if you get the trust of the family and indirectly move their mind, you start manipulating people out. So it's Sun Tzu says, only the best generals can use spies, because you have to manipulate on a vast scale with lots of strings all over the place. And then the end result is that the enemy makes a decision that is wrong.
Wow, that sounds very much like how it's done today. Yeah. And it's crazy that these guys, man, back even in the ancient, what we refer to now as the ancient days, is done the exact same way. How much do you think that we learned? I mean, as Britain obviously taught spycraft to America, so I'll refer to it as you guys. How much do you think you guys took from that old way of doing things? Or is it just coincidence, do you think, that it's done the same way now?
I totally think, well, you get tradecraft basic, like a basic level of tradecraft. Every country everywhere will develop their spies and to a certain level do that. In fact, the actual way it went is Japan gave up on ninjutsu and did it the Western way. And some people, so they had a spy school in World War II called Nakano, and it was dead secret. So Nakano Spy School is famous when you're going to Japanese history. And there's a hospital on the site now. I went there and sort of had a look. But they used to pose as an art college for students, and all the spies used to grow the hair long and do photography and all that. But actually, they were being taught 50 years before by like the Germans and the French and the English how to do military spying and all that. And they just did that. So it's derailing trains and everything. They actually forgot about their own espionage and picked up Western espionage. Interesting. So it went the other way. And when now we're digging up the ninja stuff, you sort of see how universal, deep espionage is.
Yeah, it's a fascinating topic, man. And I like the way that you tie it all in together. And then another thing that you guys do over there is you'll sit on a round table and you use figurines and show the old tactics that like Sun Tzu used to talk about and stuff like that, which I thought was fascinating. Now, I don't want to get too far off of the ninjutsu and samurai, but I'm just going to ask you real quick, the current situation in Ukraine, just as a tactician, man, do you think they're going to be able to hold out Kyiv for a little while? And if so, do you think that eventually that will tire the Russians out enough to gain things in their favor?
I'm going to be honest with you. I know it's going on. I've not kept up that much. The amount of times that you sort of like, something's going wrong. They've been fighting for it's like the Middle East. When do you keep paying attention to it? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think I'll just wait. I've got my house kitted out with swords. And when the nuclear weapons start falling, I'll get my armor on, I'll go out there and we'll just start, murdering everyone. You know what I mean? The cops can't do me for that because there's no laws then, So
yeah, right.
Could they really face off against Russia? That's a big power, isn't it? That is. But what's surprised, I was talking to my friends the other day, or cousins actually, is how quickly they've come back up since the USSR fell, and they're just back again with strength. And it's almost like Germany, when they, after World War I, came back with a vengeance. So the question will be is like, are we really heading for they've got their power back? What's next?
Yeah, it's crazy the situation happening over there, man. And then, Putin's obviously threatening us with nukes and stuff. Like, gosh damn, I would have never thought. Anyway, man, it's so the samurai, okay? They have these ancient ways of thinking about fighting and energy. I don't know if you've heard of, I'm sure you have, Mushin, Zanshin, like the way of the mind, no mind type of technique.
Yeah.
Is this something that they really would have practiced?
So that Mu, right, the character Mu, which happens all the time in like Chinese, and it's really annoying when they translate it from Chinese and Japanese into English. It's like no form without form, and you're like, have form that's no form for your form, and you're just like, that makes no sense in English. What are you doing? So, right, I've got I'll explain what Mu means, right? Mu is not nothing, it's absence of something. Right? So what that means is, imagine an apple tree, yeah? So an apple tree, if you break it up inside, there are no apples in it, yeah? There's just not there. But come summer and harvest time, there will be apples on the tree, but there are no apples inside the tree. Why? Because they are absent at the moment, but they have potential and they are going to come. So what this means, so no apple, you don't be like, oh, where's the apple? You know it grows on the outside from the internal aspect. So in warfare, what happens is there's no form, and they get together and form will create, and then it will dispense, and then it will create. And the rhythm of war will go, and then there'll be scatterings and rallies, and then they'll be bringing them back together. So a good tactician will be like, are we in a state of solidness, or are we in a state of absence? Because once absence is, it will come back again. So this is where nobody gets it, them stupid translations they make,
And so it's more about tactics than anything else. It's not about, meditation or anything per se.
No, well, that's when you take it. So the same language, if you use it for war, means that. But if you use it for Buddhism, it's like if you're just constantly thinking about it, your form is too structured. Whereas if you let go and you have none, then you let the right forms build and let them flow out, and let them come in and let them flow out. So it's the kanji, mu, meaning nothing. You could even do it for flower arranging. There's no flower now, but it will be. And can I, make these flowers into nice organizations? So the principle is the same no matter what.
Okay. It always reminds me when I hear about, Mushin Zanshin. For those guys watching who aren't familiar with these terms, I know we've used them a few times on our channel, but Mushin is, Anthony, am I correct? Mind, no mind?
So basically, so shin is mind, but the problem here is Japanese don't have mind, it's mind heart. You always see it translated as mind heart, right? Yeah. What it means is, because we always think of the brain and the heart as separate, but in our older language, in English, it's like, we feel it from the heart. So it's more that. Okay. And mu means absence of, so it's mushin, having no focused mind on something. Right. And zanshin, again, shin is basically to focus when something's happened. So, for example, when you're attacked, a swordsman will do his stuff, then check and focus for everyone else. So you see modern people with guns do it. They shoot, they bang, 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 and they'll check left, check right, come back, move. And that's zanshin. It's the same thing.
The Last Samurai with Tom Cruise, and I do want to get your opinion on that because I have the feeling you're going to have a certain, yeah, exactly. But there is a scene in that where he's Tom Cruise is doing the sword stuff, and he gets whacked and whacked and whacked, and the guy says too much thinking. Yeah. And that always kind of reminds me of that concept of mushin, of who's the old guy? He said, if your mind stops on the opponent's sword, you'll be taken by the sword. I'm not sure if you, off the top of your head, but I'm sure you've heard that quote before. And it really is a very true thing. Like if there's too much focus on tunnel vision, right? If there's too much focus on one thing, it's not good. You need to kind of like unfocus, if that makes any, I don't know if that makes any sense to you.
Yep, they are quoting basically. So swordsmanship changes around 1550 to 1650, and you get a lot more zen in swordsmanship. Before that, it was like, just go murder everyone, let's burn them down, let's spears are out, let's do it. Then they start focusing on zen. But what you find here is especially a school called Yagyu Shinkagi Ryu. They're probably quoting from them. And they have a book called Heiho Kadensho, The Family Secret Traditions. And it's a series of letters between a Zen master and a swordsman. And he is basically saying, if you focus on the sword, it's lost. If you focus on that, and I'll explain exactly how this works. It's not mystical, but it is mystical in the sense you'll see what I mean. When you have a car crash, or you know what I mean. So everybody can relate to a problem with their car, yeah. When a car and suddenly somebody crashes into it, or the car's going wrong, you don't stop and go, I'm now going to go left. I'm going to apply my brake. I'm going to turn and handbrake. I'm going to miss the post. You don't do any of that. Or when you're in a fight, if you're at a fight, you know full well that like you don't think of your fight, you just do it and you remember it afterwards. So he's saying if you try to think about everything inside of it, you will be killed instantly. You're too far behind. So it's about muscle memory for a start. Can I do guns and everything, muscle memory, and proper subconscious reactions to external stimuli. So if you can train your mind enough that you can let go and train your body so it responds correctly, that's perfection in warfare.
Now, well said, by the way. That's extremely well said. I do want to touch on jiu-jitsu, right? Because everyone's doing Brazilian jiu-jitsu now, and like the thing.
Well, first of all, what was your question about Last Samurai?
All right. So I'm glad you brought that up. Now, what is your opinion on this movie as far as the historical content in it? I mean, Tom Cruise aside, do you think this was a somewhat accurate depiction of how samurai would have lived?
So, all right, it is an accurate but idealized version. So the thing here is Tom Cruise is actually not out of place in that film. He's totally in place. So what most people don't realize is in around the year 1500, there was tons of Westerners in Japan, yeah? And in the year 1850 to 1870, there's tons of Westerners in Japan. Now, annoyingly, they picked the 1870s for Tom Cruise, which is it's the least impressive one. In the 1500s, the Jesuits there, Japan was at war, there was shinobi were active, everybody's doing that stuff. It's the coolest film that they've never made yet. And, you know, why not? So what happened was when Tom Cruise's time in the 1860s, 70s, the Japanese were not divided into samurai and modern. That's not true. They were both samurai and modern had sort of merged together. And very quickly, the samurai adopted the Western guns. And so you would have samurai with guns, you'd have them with normal muskets. And especially towards the end of that conflict, there was tons of samurai, even in like non-samurai uniforms with guns shooting. And it was a sort of, the entire war was about, should samurai rule or should the government be, you know, non-samurai? That was it. So it is correct, and they look correct, and they're wearing the correct things. But they've just made sure everything's divided very easy for the audience. Okay. There you go, guys. You know,
that is an interesting point in the Japanese history that I know just a little bit about, as far as when basically the West came over and we're like, we got guns and we got ships, and like you either join or die, motherflowers. Like, and it is sad, I think, what happened to the samurai ultimately. And you know, at the end of the movie, there. They cut the guy's hair off and stuff. And I'm assuming that was actually kind of done, right?
Yeah, it was actually samurai. So samurai status is their type of top knot and 2 swords. So this idea that only samurai can wear swords is not right. Originally, in the 1500s, even peasants wore 2 swords because Japan's a dangerous place. So it's the same as gun laws. Back in the Wild West, whoever could wear a gun, yeah? But eventually the government, right, you're not wearing this. And now in Britain, you have no way you'd see a gun. You never see one. You just wouldn't see it. So we went from Wild West days, same way here, where everybody could carry a gun. If you read Sherlock Holmes, he's always got a gun on him. Watson's like, oh, bring your pistol, Watson, let's shoot some people. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, Holmes. And then all of a sudden they just totally stop it. So it's the same for samurai. They said, stop wearing your top knots, stop wearing your swords. And it was illegal after a certain date. And then they went around and stopped them.
And if I'm correct, the samurai were like, screw that, like we'll fight you to the death. Some of them, right? And
that's where it was. Is some samurai were pro let's change, and some samurai were against it. So it was actually samurai v samurai. The entire battle was samurai v samurai. But what it was is the reason is you had the shogun, who's a central government, and some people had realized, and to be honest, there was a hatred for over 250 years from some samurai to the central government. So when the Westerners came along and were like, we'll decentralize your government, but we'll recreate it in a more modern way, the other people were like, yep, let's do it. You know, because they'd held this grudge for nearly 300 years. So it was just like samurai versus samurai for who has power over Japan, the new way or the old way.
And, you know, this whole concept of new versus old, you know, so General Mattis once said that there's nothing new under the sun when it comes to war. And you brought up that, you know, 2 swords and everything, which I equate to like everyone, you know, even in the cowboy days, like you said, someone's got a rifle, they got a pistol, right? Same basic concept. And I did a video about this ages and ages ago when I first got into jiu-jitsu. It was the difference between Brazilian jiu-jitsu and Japanese old jiu-jitsu. And I want to get your opinion on this, but basically the concept that I laid out is that their version of samurai's version of warfare would have been fairly similar to what we do today. You know, you start with long range projectiles and stuff. So, you know, arrows, catapulting, burning stuff, things like that. Then you move into small arms range where they would have had, I guess, again, arrows, spears, even muskets in the later point. And then close combat where you go to, you know, from your spear to your sword, then to your little sword, and then ultimately, if you had to, hand-to-hand combat. Would that be sort of an accurate depiction of how it would have gone down back in the day?
Yeah, totally accurate. Yeah, absolutely. It starts here and it gets there and there. And then to add to that, you start to get skirmish, and then you get people moving, and you also get teams. So one of my favorite ones I always like to say is the samurai death squads. And these guys, what they would do is, so you get some samurai who went out and they were just strong and they had a helper at the side of them who would pass them stuff, like a squire.
Yeah.
But on the whole, they were out there, just a really hard lad going around murdering everything. So if you saw one of them, you'd group off into 3s or 5s, and one of you would take him on, but keep him at bay. The other one would go around the perimeter and stop anyone interfering with your combat. And the third one would go behind and knife him in the back. And then, so it was a distraction, knifing, and protection system. And then they would take the head, and you do that 3 times, you got 3 powerful heads. So when you go home, you say, we defeated this guy. And then suddenly loads of money's coming in. So imagine you got like sort of special forces lad just going out in squads going, right, you do that, and we'll shoot them off. Bang, let's go next.
Oh, man, that's really, like, that reminds me of modern bayonet tactics, actually, where one guy will go in, another guy will try to stay behind him, and eventually the rear man will flank off and get him by surprise. You're
totally into that sort of stuff. So this idea that samurai went in and announced their names, it's almost a bit like Errol Finn and Robin Hood style. It was there, but it was like a ceremonial thing before a major battle. In an actual battle, these guys were throwing hand grenades. They actually had hand grenades. So samurai, they have clay pots with gunpowder inside of it, wrapped up, lobbing stuff at each other, and fire weapons, the lot. Samurai weapons are awesome. There's tons of them.
Now, they invented gunpowder, but like before we had it, didn't they?
Well, it's debated who invented gunpowder, either Indians or the Chinese, yeah? So the Chinese, even whoever invented it, it ended up in Japan in about 1300s, and they had rudimentary cannons and things like that. But it wasn't until about 1553 or somewhere around there that some Portuguese dropped off and they had muskets, and they'd never seen muskets before. Now, most people say, oh, the samurai never used guns. That's nonsense. The samurai were the biggest manufacturer of guns in the world in the 16th century. They were actually getting iron from England and pulling all the stuff in the trade routes, and they just made tons of guns.
Now, all right, I promise we'll get into jiu-jitsu, guys, but I gotta ask this. So the cross reference between Japanese samurai and Chinese, right? So I've always heard Sun Tzu and everything, ninja or shinobi kind of came from China, and a lot of that circulated there. I thought I've heard that you've quoted guys in Japan quoting Sun Tzu. Is there a tie-in between China and Japan?
Right. So to put that's a bloody big question, right? But basically, so China is the center of the world in the East, and everybody thinks it's called the Middle Kingdom, basically. And Korea and everyone around it are all feeding into that. And in fact, the Japanese are not Japanese. They, like the Anglo-Saxons, came over and took over the Welsh. The Chinese and the Koreans, in about the year 0, roughly, came over and took over Japan from the native inhabitants. Most people don't know about the natives of Japan, but they're called Ainu, and they live in the north, and they don't look anything like the Japanese. They're like sort of Sami, sort of, very much tribal Indian people, if you like. And but the Japanese have been there for 2,000 years, and if not more. So they are very much based on Chinese culture, but they originally had a standing army like China. But bit by bit, that broke down and it disintegrated. So they had Chinese things there, but then they just made it more Japanese. And then that's why Bushi was an original warrior and samurai was a servant. When it all collapsed, the servants rose up and took power and became the samurai. That's how. So throughout their history, they've had Buddhism, which is Indian. Everybody forgets that Japan runs off of Indian religion. Yeah. And then they have Chinese Taoism. And then they also have Chinese military tactical manuals like Sun Tzu, the 7 military classics and all that. So yes, they have Chinese influence in there, but you can't outright say the ninja are from China. Yes, they're heavily influenced by Sun Tzu, but there's also definitely Japanese burglary. Basically, imagine a spy and a burglar mixed together and you got a ninja, and that's exactly how they developed.
Okay. So now, how would this Sun Tzu's manual have gotten over to Japan? Because it's an island. So would they come on ships, or how would that have happened?
Yep. Even before the samurai existed, they've been, in fact, prehistoric times, they've been shipping backwards and forward across the Sea of Japan, which is not that big, to mainland China. And in fact, if you go to, this film that's never been made, which I want to be made, is 1550 Japan, Chinese monks are there, Jesuit priests. They're building Christian churches. They're celebrating Christmas in Japan in 1550.
Wow.
Or, you know, I mean, Christmas is there. And they've got all this stuff going on. Koreans are coming over, and they've actually got a massive piracy problem. There are pirates roaming the Japanese sea, and the Chinese and Japanese gang together and get pirates. They invade Korea. So most people, again, probably don't know that. One of the biggest invasions in that area was Japan invaded China in the 1590s, and they massacred everyone. Korea was annihilated by Japan. And today, Korea hate Japan for it. It was 500 years ago, and there are still problems politically because of it.
Yeah, one of the big flashpoints we look at as far as like modern geopolitics is, I think there's some islands off of Japan, right, that they inhabit, and then China wants them back or something like that. And
Russia at the top. People don't realize how close Russia and Japan are. You know, they're like that.
I didn't even realize that, to be honest.
Yeah, Japan, it goes right to the top, and you can just go north to the island hop to Russia.
Wow.
Yeah, if I got it right, you know what I mean. But they've argued over that. Do you know there's the Japo-Russian War in 1905? The Japanese obliterated the Russians in a modern war.
Wow, I never knew that.
Yeah, and before that, everybody's like, what's Japan? Who cares about Japan? But they've been going massively, getting westernized. That's to say all their military was Western, everything for about 50 years. In fact, actually, it's from Tom Cruise, the film, yeah? You know, when you see all the Western people teaching them, they carried on up to World War II. And it wasn't until about 1905 the world went, oh my God, Japan just trounced Russia in a war. And they hammered them.
Wow.
And then the next thing, it was like World War. Then they invaded Manchuria in the 1930s. Again, massacred all half the Chinese. Have you ever heard of the Nanking incident?
I've heard of it, but I don't know anything else.
But to put it in context very quickly for your listeners, the Chinese ran to the Nazi quarter of the city to get safety.
Wow.
From the Japanese were so cruel and bad.
Okay.
They were raping women with swords. They were beheading. They were burning people alive. They were targeting babies and stuff. Have a look at it. It's horrific. You bring your stomach up when you start looking at pictures of it. So there's always been, from the prehistoric age to now, China-Japanese trade war going on. They are not isolated.
It's crazy how much they hate each other, man. I mean, even you look at the movie Ip Man, right? And about, you know, China and Wing Chun and all that. There's I think it was Ip Man 2, where they really depict how Japanese soldiers came in during World War II and just brutalized the Chinese people. So that's a long hatred, man. And, you know, I don't know where it ends, but we got a really good question here, actually. So A Boring Sandwich is saying that he's read a bunch of Ashita Kim and Stephen Hayes' ninja books as a kid. So without you know, getting to whatever, man, what can you tell us about Ashita Kim? And I'll preface this question with my personal opinion, is that I've heard that he isn't exactly a historian. So,
right. Basically, first of all, we've got to divide this between what are they as people and their work, yeah? So, and I have to word this carefully, but I don't mind saying it. Like, first of all, I spoke to Ashita Kim many times. He's a dead nice man. He's dead nice. I've spoke to Stephen Hayes. He's really nice. Stephen Hayes keeps himself to himself and doesn't get involved with the community. Ashita Kim is well out there. He's still like doing it. A lot of people slag Ashita Kim's stuff off, but actually his books are well written. They're well written. But the simple fact is I have never, ever found a single shred of proof anywhere that ever suggests anyone has a living ninja tradition. It doesn't matter if it's Ashita Kim, Stephen Hayes. There is no one on this planet that, in my opinion, that has a living tradition of ninjutsu. There are people who've researched it, like myself, and brought it back, but the proof is not there.
So, Hatsumi Sensei is
totally not real.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just put my opinion out there, man, because I have a lot of controversial opinions. And I don't mind. I've seen the stuff that guy's teaching, and it's a little bit fairy tale, to be honest. I think that Stephen Hayes, I saw he made a number of years ago, him and the other ninjutsu guys made the great documentary, and he had great clips from it where he was talking about kind of the essence of ninjutsu, if you will, and what it means kind of today and everything. And I think he's a very well-spoken man. But I guess my question here would be that whole kind of modern thing about Hatsumi Sensei and all of those guys there, where they will teach you the art of ninjutsu and everything, it's not exactly historical, correct?
It's not exactly what, sorry?
Historical.
No, yeah. So basically, all of this idea, if anybody tells you they're doing a ninja hand-to-hand combat, now we've got to be careful here, because people misuse the word martial art, but hand-to-hand physical combat with swords or anything, that is the secret skills of the ninja fighting. It is bullshit. It is useless. It's lie. Outright, guys, it's a lie. But so then the question is, what are they teaching? What they're teaching is various forms of old jiu-jitsu that they've clinkered together, put a black gi on, put a ninja patch on it, and off they go. It does not appear before the 1960s, 70s. It is nowhere to be seen. There are specific things that ninja do. For example, I've seen a diving strike, actually. So ninja don't have a special combat system, but they do have bits to help them get out. So, for example, if you're chasing someone, then you can sometimes dive, rugby, sort of like American football dive, and cut the back of the hamstrings with your sword. If they're getting away, you do that. Obviously, you're graveled up and like, but that's one. The other one is sort of like they'll put firecrackers in a tree, and then a friend lights the firecrackers. So when they're escaping, everybody thinks it's musket fire. And, there's that sort of stuff, but there is no sort of a ninja does this with a sword or a samurai. Doesn't happen.
What I always heard about ninjutsu, whatever, is their hand-to-hand combat, is that they would have studied kind of what their clan or family would have studied, right? Like every family kind of had a version of martial arts that they might have studied, and it would have been no different. Is from you and I, you study Muay Thai, I do Jiu-jitsu, and Bob over here does Wing Chun, right? Would it have been type similar to that?
Yep, totally. And in fact, there's a big thing here is that most people don't realize is the samurai before a certain period didn't live in cities. They all lived in isolated farmsteads. So imagine, hillbilly style, in the outback, it's your uncles and your cousins learning to fight together. Right. So you'd have a family style. And it's only when they moved to cities that they started putting gyms together. Like the actually samurai were the first ones to do martial art gyms. They would have a building where everybody went. And believe it or not, even back in samurai times, they had on a Tuesday at 1 o'clock, it will be this. On a Tuesday afternoon, it will be this. And they actually had, you could go and join up.
That's cool. Miyamoto Musashi, I always butcher his name, but he was one of those guys, right? He was a former swordsman that then opened a gym.
Well, he had less students than everybody else, but he did have students.
Okay.
So if we're going to talk about samurai martial arts, there's the big sort of elephant in the room is there's 500 years of samurai martial arts missing. And there's so the samurai's roughly about 1,000 years, yeah, roughly. And the first half of it, we don't know how they fought. There's no records, there's nothing. But the second half of it, we know how they fought. But Miyamoto Musashi says they've touched, and he was there at the turning point, exactly at the turning point. So before Musashi, it's sort of like there are a couple of schools in existence, but even that has a complicated back argument of how real or how, much. And after him, and he says in his Gorin no Sho book, he says, people don't fight like they used to. They've gone stupid and they're daft. Why are they doing this? And that's where you get Mushin and Zanshi and everybody's like, and he's like, that's not, and they do all these weird stepping techniques. He says, if you're in a river, if you're on stairs, how do you do that? What have you got this daft stance for? Stop it. Just walk normally and kill people with a sword. He says it's dead easy. So you are, the martial arts are divided, and I would love to find out the original martial arts.
So, all right, now to get into jiu-jitsu, man. They did jiu-jitsu. What we know today is jiu-jitsu, correct?
Right. Okay. So let me get this right. You've probably got lots of jiu-jitsu followers, I'm assuming.
Of course. Yeah. Of course.
Yeah. And you are a Brazilian jiu-jitsu guy.
I'm a guy. Yeah. I'm a blue belt in jiu-jitsu. Before that, lots of other martial arts, but that's the grappling system that I like as far as, close in, rolling around on the ground type of thing. So, and I get constantly, I get questions about, didn't the samurai study this? Isn't this what the samurai would have done? Isn't our lineage directly to the samurai? So,
right. So I've got a couple of things. First of all, for those listening, you're probably going to be annoyed with me now. But second, it'll turn out really good. You'll be like, yeah, that's cool. So don't worry about it, right? We'll get there. So Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I must admit, I'm not up on the exact lines of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but it annoys me, this Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu name. It's clearly Japanese Jiu-Jitsu. It's clearly. I know they've modified it for the ring and all that, but you can go, we know it go, who does it go through? Which is the Japanese family it starts with in Brazil?
Oh, man.
I forgot the name.
Yeah. Feel like an a-hole now for not remembering, but yeah.
But you know what I mean? The family's there. They teach in the Gracie family and all that and everything. And if you go back to them, they've got striking, pucket, a lot more stuff and all that. They are definitely from samurai jiu-jitsu. Without a doubt, it's Japanese jiu-jitsu, right? So when you see Japanese jiu-jitsu and you look at Brazilian jiu-jitsu, you're like, why are they different when they're both Japanese? The fact is that after World War II, everybody hated the samurai, even the Japanese. They were like, because remember, they were using the samurai as a poster logo for go and kill yourself. People were holding hand grenades to their chests and murdering, all sorts going on. So they said, let's get rid of the samurai image. So that's why Aikido comes in, which is literally Daito Ryu. So some good martial arts. And they say, we'll just make it about flowiness and about unification. And look at us, we're a peaceful people. That's what they're saying. So this idea now, it's just years and years of staticness has got Japanese jiu-jitsu down to just clunky uselessness.
Right.
Whereas, but Brazil, when the Japanese went to Brazil in the 1930s and 20s, they didn't have to go through the post-war, let's get rid of the brutality of the samurai. So they carried on, beginning in Brazil, where it's brutal, being brutal samurai practitioners. And whereas the Japanese were like, no, we're all peaceful. Sorry about the atomic weapon. So I know you used atomic weapons on it and all that. So what you find, actually, not only that, but people who in Brazil, the Japanese community in Brazil, are far more older style Japanese than modern people. In fact, Japanese Brazilians who go to Japan don't like it. They say this is too different.
Yeah. So it's and I'm trying to remember. I'd have to look it up. But the guy who brought jiu-jitsu over from Japan. Anyway, he here's what I've heard. Here's what I've told people. Right? Is you got judo, which was taken from jiu-jitsu, and then they took out a lot of the really brutal drop on his head type stuff, and they made it more of a sport, right? Like you're saying, they want to be more peaceful now. And then, what's his name? Guys, you can hate me later for forgetting his name. What's his name went over to Brazil and taught them like all the rugged hand-to-hand, kill him up type stuff, like you're saying. So when we practice Brazilian jiu-jitsu today, I mean, besides for the sporty modern stuff, but the essence of like arm bars and rear naked chokes and all of that literally does go back to the samurai.
Yes, you were. So that's closer to what the samurai did than what the samurai schools today are doing. So the best way I can describe it is, and I try to find many ways to describe it. You know when you go to the seaside and there's a rope?
A rope?
A rope from a boat. You got a boat and a rope.
Sure.
And you got barnacles all over it, yeah?
Yes.
And you move the rope and you crush it, you get the barnacle. The inside rope is strong and perfect, but that much barnacles and crap is on it. It's locked and it's static.
Yeah.
That's Japanese jiu-jitsu today. It needs Brazilian jiu-jitsu, the sport, broke away all the barnacles and was like, right, that doesn't work. Let's get back to that. Let's do this. This works, and all that. Okay. So that's why Brazilian jiu-jitsu should not be called Brazilian jiu-jitsu. It should be called original Japanese jiu-jitsu. And then you should have...
I'm sorry. You see, like even here in America, I'm sure even in Britain, you can find still old Japanese jiu-jitsu being taught, where it's more like bring them down, throw them down, and hit them in the face type of thing. And so that would be, I guess my question is that Japanese jiu-jitsu being taught today still pretty authentic?
What you mean through Brazilian jiu-jitsu?
No, Brazilian jiu-jitsu and Japanese jiu-jitsu today, from what I've seen, are two fairly different things. Where Brazilian jiu-jitsu is more ground-based, and Japanese jiu-jitsu is more, judo throws and strikes and stuff like that.
Yeah, basically, they're always going to start from the feet in samurai times, because you wouldn't start. A lot of the stuff now, traditional samurai. Right, I want to make. There's a big difference between historical and traditional, right, guys? Historical is what they did back in the warring period. So whenever you're talking about samurai, if you're talking about before the year 1600, it's brutal. What happens after that is peacetime. So throughout peace, they start kneeling down, they start doing it all like this, and then, but towards the end of the samurai time, they were still brutal, and it was only after World War II they made it really, bad. So yes, some stuff out there, but I've never seen a traditional Japanese dojo still practicing the way they used to do in the old days.
Okay.
The closest thing is Brazilian Jiu-jitsu.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, the closest thing. So that's what I mean. Brazilian Jiu-jitsu is actually the real inheritor of the samurai way of doing it, if you like. Of course, they have changed it for the rules of the cage and all that and everything. You know, it's a little bit different. But the intensity of it, the moves of it, they're all there in the original Japanese stuff. But this is the bit you won't like, guys, is actually Brazilian Jiu-jitsu or just realistic Jiu-jitsu was not very much used in old samurai times. It would get you killed instantly, right? So the main thing, so imagine going to South America and fighting a gang and going to the floor when they've all got knives. You would be like, that's probably not the best thing you want to do. It's like, right, I've got him in this top. There's 4 lads round him all with machetes, and you're like, got him, lads. You know what I mean? Right. They are going to butcher you left, right, and center. So samurai, this is what I say, before the year 1580s, all people wore swords who could afford it, and most people could afford it. This idea that swords are mega expensive is nonsense as well. A new sword is expensive. A second-hand old sword is not. So if I want to buy a brand new car, I can't afford a brand new car, but I can afford a car. So in the future, imagine people come back and say, oh, cars were $20,000, $30,000, so peasants couldn't afford it. Only the president had a car. Nonsense. You know, everybody's got a bloody sword. It might be a bit old. So you used to find that jiu-jitsu is not there in the old samurai documents. It says, so it wasn't called jiu-jitsu originally, it was called kumi-uchi. Kumi means to grab and uchi means to strike. Right. So it means grabbing and striking, kumi-uchi. But first and foremost, it's a sword fight. Second, it's a knife fight about that long. And absolutely at the very end, it's a jiu-jitsu fight. You know what I mean? Unless you are in a serious position. So let me put this out, guys. No samurai would ever not have a wakizashi on him side arm. You would never have not have a side arm. There's only one situation, and that is when you're near an aristocrat or the lord. So you say no side arms allowed. And even then, they have what's called shinobizashi, which means hidden dagger. So there is never this idea that you would grip a samurai and throw him down. It would be like knife, knife, knife. And they do the 3 stabs in one area and twists and all that sort of stuff. Okay. So yeah, 3 stab, and then you 3 stab again and all that. And then usually you're always with a servant. So imagine if you've got a mate, yeah, you're always with it. If you get a bath, your mate sits outside with a sword. He gets a bath, you know what I mean? You do it around. You go to sleep, you take it in turns to wait up. There's all that sort of stuff. And then it says if you go into a dangerous area, so wherever you guys are, your local dangerous area, imagine in your Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu dojo, you get the 3 hardest lads and you say, guys, I need a hand. I've got to walk through this street. Okay, let's go, guys. And they're all tooled up to shit with loads of stuff. So this idea that the jiu-jitsu fighting is pretty, you know, so the question then comes is, where does it come in? And it's one of those last ditch things when you're on the battlefield, the swords are broken, it's gone down, the knives have been out and you've killed a few people, but now that's been knocked out your hand, you're gripping people and you're throwing them, but you never stay on the floor more than a few seconds. It's get them off, roll off, get up, find a weapon, let's go.
So very much the same way that special forces guys train today, right? They shoot with the rifle goes dry, they transition to the pistol. Hopefully they got a knife. And if all else fails, they learn some hand-to-hand techniques as well. Yeah.
So your hand-to-hand techniques are like, so Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu people spend nearly all their life learning these techniques because they've got to get out of this role, they've got to get out of that. But actually, you would have a split second to get out of it before someone on the battlefield would spot you and just knife you because your head's valuable.
And you've got some pretty cool videos actually on your YouTube channel, like how do samurai fight in armor, which actually shows really well what you're talking about. Illustrates the point of you grab them and you go for your knife and you kill them. It's not all that, you know, hiya, chop them up type of thing.
Yeah, how would you punch someone in armor? That's ridiculous. You don't punch someone in armor, do you?
Exactly. Yeah.
You know? Clack. Oh, all this iron stuff. No, you know what I mean?
Where the joint breaks and stuff like that come in, right? Yeah. Is they were fighting in armor.
Yeah, absolutely. You're more about joint locking. Even if you go back to Germanic swordsmanship, is people like Talhofer. He's a so if you don't know, there's HEMA. Do you know HEMA? Historical European Martial Arts. And what these guys did in about the 1990s, they took all the scrolls from old Germany and France and England, and they recreated the soldiership and the hand-to-hand combat. And it is almost the same as, you know, Japanese stuff. It's all there. The same locks are there, the same grips are there, the lot.
Apocalypse, thank you so much, man. Apocalypse Survivor asks, what about Yoshi, Sheriff, and Akban? I'm
right.
Not sure, yeah.
Them lot out there, are they any good or are they not? It's not the question, okay? They are not teaching ninjutsu, not at all. They are teaching Japanese jiu-jitsu. Whether it's any good or not, I always say the same thing. If you walk into a gym and you can batter the lad who's teaching, it's not worth studying there. Or he's an older chap who's got, he's not in his prime anymore, but he can teach you a few things. You know what I mean? You can get on with it. So is it good, is it bad? You have to decide. So going back to the Hatsumi thing, so this is where I have to support Hatsumi, even though I know what you mean. Is the fairy tale stuff, it went strange. But in the 1980s, when everybody else was doing this for jiu-jitsu, and all this, Hatsumi was the first one to make it more fluid and say, let's grip them. And he kicks it, let's do this, and let's move. And from there, instead of it going down a really realistic route, they then went into the sort of like, let's Aikido throw. But there was a moment of a few years where he was taking traditional jiu-jitsu into the better realms of tour. But then he sort of went crazy, and Brazilian jiu-jitsu came in and took over.
Okay. That makes sense.
Akban, I think, is from what I've seen of him, he's a good mover. He's got the stuff, but he is teaching Hatsumi's stuff probably better than Hatsumi teaches it.
Now, the ninja, okay. These guys, from what you're saying, is it's not like what everybody thinks. They didn't go out there and do all these magic tricks and stuff like that, but they did do magic. What we would refer to as, I guess, like rituals and stuff like that. How did this transfer over into what they were doing? Did it offer them like spiritual protection, or what were they doing with this stuff?
So to go, let's backstep that a bit, yeah, right? Imagine if you're going to fight a samurai, right? I'm not saying, like, you've got to be right here. Not all samurai are these super cool warrior dudes. But let's be honest, there is a lot of guys there who are well-trained, who, if you went back in time, do you know how tall a samurai is?
Now, how tall were they?
5 feet tall.
No way.
5 feet, at max 5'2".
Wow.
So we know this because, well, first of all, there's plenty of skeletons remain. But we know when they did trench warfare, they used to dig 3 feet down and put the soil 2 feet up because that covered most samurai.
Oh, wow. Huh.
So these guys are tiny, but I'll tell you what, you won't want to fight one. So the reason is hand-to-hand combat. You'd grip him and throw him and just smash him against the wall. We're way too big for the samurai. You know what I mean?
Right.
But as I said, these guys, first of all, imagine, child soldiers in Africa. Mm. You go down that route where you see them when they're older, they're drugged up, they are, indoctrinated. They will literally kill their own parents. They're really severely like that. Now, the Japanese didn't really do drugs, but imagine indoctrinating a child from birth to be a murderer. And that is pretty much what you create a samurai. So then when you go into Muslim terrorists, you start saying, right, or even any fundamentalists like the Irish IRA, you know what I mean? They're back in the day. You imagine somebody like that coming after you solely for you. And that is a samurai. So you add on the ritual and magical aspects is they've got their training since childhood. They are tooled up with loads of weapons. They've probably got a ton of mates with them. And not only that, they're heavily religious and believe in reincarnation, and they're killing in the name of the emperor. So the emperor blessed them, who's a god, by the way. A personal god said, you go and fight him. The shogun, who's actually against the emperor, but they believe in both, is also giving you permission. You're not going to get done for this. Go over there and murder him. It's okay. So it's like the police turn up at my house and say, go murder him after I've trained all my life. And on top of that, they have ritualistic magic to help them. Okay. So samurai magic this is where it does differ. Samurai magic tends to be less dark than ninja magic. But ninja, or, samurai yubi who are ninja doing their magic is horrific. So you get a dog, a black dog, and you can hear my dog snoring here. You get a black dog and you gouge its eyes out alive. Yep. You will dry them out, put a needle through them, and you put horsehair through it, and you wrap it in red cloth and you put it as a headband. And you see through the eyes of the dog in the night, and it will hide you because of that. and you go in there and break into someone's house using ritualistic spells and then murder them in their sleep or so in the bath or something like that. So,
wow.
you know, this is where the other thing is they like rip out turtles from shells alive. They do that. And then decapitating dogs. There's all this sort of stuff going on. And what was the other one? Oh, the other one. Pick up like a rattlesnake, the equivalent of a rattlesnake in Japan. You pick it up and you get a pair of pliers and you rip its teeth out. And you throw it away, and then you use the hairpins as an invisibility spell and protection and leadership.
Wow.
So
wow.
these guys,
okay.
5 foot tall, crazy motherfucker. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like that's insane, man. Like these guys were harder than nails, dude. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So that's where we hear all of this, like, you know, and you've got guys teaching like ninja magic, but you that's really what it was. It wasn't this other stuff. So what about like the quintessential ninja smoke bomb and stuff like that? They actually had stuff like that, or
it's a yes and no answer to that one. They didn't have a bomb that they throw down and it goes and they run away. That wouldn't work. I'll tell you why that wouldn't work. It'd be ridiculously funny. But they do have lots of gas weapons, lots of smoke, and that they use in a battlefield. Okay. So what you would do, imagine, so when people do this about ninjas, it really annoys me. Like they throw the smoke bomb and they run away. Where are they running away to? Where are they going to? Do you know what I mean? It's like there isn't like, well, you know, that's it. So if a ninja is infiltrating a castle, Japanese castles have multiple layers with multiple guards. It's like throwing a smoke bomb down, running up to the next guard and going, sorry, oh, right. They don't get murdered. So what they did have, though, is they definitely had a hand grenade. They definitely had venomous, poisonous gases. I mean, like I can't remember the chemicals that they put in it, but it's full of arsenics and stuff that you wouldn't ever want to breathe in. So if you're got a 10-man team of ninjas, they would have bombs on them and they throw it through the arrow ports and smoke grenades, you know, basically noxious gas grenades. Right. Or sometimes they have it in powders and they just throw it through the window. Or what they do is put it in a musket, put dampened paper after the black powder, and then put really irritating compounds down it and fire them into holes. So everybody comes out coughing with iron filings and blood and everything. And then they start killing them. So that's how gas is used. But it seems to have evolved over the time into like poof, and then, you know, jump away.
So if somebody wanted to learn all of these like ancient poison recipes and everything, are they written down somewhere?
Yeah. So I usually have my books on thingy. Sorry about that. But basically, the Book of Ninja has a load of spells, a load of recipes in them. So my main one is Book of Ninja for that. But I've not tried a lot. A lot of them are illegal here in the UK. But I think you've got to. I'll try them one day.
Yeah. Yeah, that's some badass stuff, man. I mean, as far as all of that, you know, ancient ninja training and stuff, which I think really people is what sells people, right? Is they want to know this like ancient obscure arts of like poison and like how to kill someone with one blow and secret knife fighting, and people market it really well and all that. But you know, there are actually doctrines written down that these guys would have trained in. So we know roughly what they would have trained in actuality, correct?
Yep, totally. And doing ninja training is, first of all, it's really difficult because people come along to me and they go, I want to do ninja training. And I reopened the school, Natori Ryu. I don't know if you're aware of it. I did Natori Ryu. I reopened and we train people, long distance course and everything. But people get a little bit put off with it or disappointed, not because it's not cool, but because it's difficult. So the reason, what I think is, and I'm going to be honest here, and this is not an insult, our generation, our men have got no great war, really. You know, we've had nothing. We're sort of emasculated is the word. You're not allowed to be men's men. You're not allowed to be a toxic male and all this rubbish. And we've got nothing to do. So I have observed men, and what they love is getting together in a place with no windows and learning something secret. They feel we have lost brotherhood, haven't we? Do you know what I mean? It's like if you go to a dojo, you shut the door. What we do is secret. We're one. We've all got the same tops on. We're a load of lads. And it's not a fantasy, but it's the closest they can get to being in a warrior brotherhood.
Yes. Yeah, no, I'm in full agreement, man. And, you know, that's what I've noticed about training, right? And martial arts is guys don't want to do it if it's difficult. Like they love to like dress up and be a part of it, put it on Instagram or whatever. But
yeah,
as soon as you start rolling around and hitting each other and all that and doing more, they don't want to do it. So
yeah.
can you tell us a little bit more about your school that you run, man? Because it's the Samurai School of War, the Natori Ryo. It looks fascinating.
So basically, when I was observing everybody and I saw there's these hundreds of thousands of people around the world wanting to do this samurai stuff, then I thought, right, so I found this old school. You could say it was done a bit mysteriously, actually. You know, I was led down into it. And basically, there's a set of scrolls from the 1600s from a man called Natori Masazumi, and I've renamed them as the Book of Samurai series. We're only on book 2, and there will be 10 books out in the end. But what we do is we're on Facebook, and we're called Natori Ryu Hub, H-U-B. And what we do is we try and teach the old samurai ways. But we do find that people come along and they get a bit disillusioned because it's so difficult to do. But what we do is like a university. You can come in, you do the basics, and it's got to be online because we're all over the world. And then there's all sorts from like charting the stars, moving across rivers, swimming, fires, explosives, swordsmanship, you know, and you do it all and come together. But I think the problem is, and I think you'll agree with it, well, you might not agree, but in the 1960s and 70s, all the hard lads, like, let's be honest, there are hard lads and there's non-hard lads, yeah, in the world. Yeah. And a non-hard lad can train and train and train and get better, but he'll never beat that natural fighter who's just going to, we as men know, this is where women, sort of the feminist movement, don't get it. It isn't that men are all strong. Men know where they fit in the pecking order. If you mess about with that pecking order, you get battered. So smaller lads go into these secret groups and get protected by bigger lads. Do you know what I mean? You know where I'm at. Where was I going with this? What were we talking about?
Well, we were talking about your school and just how, you really try to keep it authentic, but it's too hard.
So what you'll find in the 1960s and 70s, all the hard lads went into karate. Yep. And what happened was, if you go back to the 60s and 70s, they were really hard, proper tough lads. But then they started leaving that because it started getting diluted. And I think the same's happening to Brazilian Jiu-jitsu. It's diluting now, online course this and learn, and it gets a bit. So basically what we find now is all the hard lads have gone to Brazilian Jiu-jitsu and all the soft lads have gone to samurai.
Okay.
So you get a lot of clearly overweight, especially older men who don't really want to get hurt, who are doing Aikido style stuff. And it is non-representative. I bet you if you got a really hard lad to just learn not just the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but traditional Jiu-Jitsu, but strip away the barnacles, to learn swordsmanship properly, get rid of all the barnacles. Again, Japanese arts are just full of this crap. They're original and real, but they're just full of crap. You get them to learn the warfare that I teach, the ninjutsu, you'd have a super hard lad who was a great thinker and a military officer style.
So you guys are still doing this stuff, right?
Yeah. We're not a big organization, as I say, because we don't fit into either category. We're not a place where old men can come and do a bit, remember when they were young and, open the shoulders a bit. But we're also not really there scrapping on the floor because we don't do that. It's like, how do you sort of like practice the art of spearing someone and getting through to the back of the ribs without, what I mean? It's like, you need to take this armor and go through. So for example, a samurai spear is the correct length to go through the armor, because remember, it's made of lace and plate.
Right.
It's to go through the armor, clear the gap, through the stomach, clear the back, out the back. That's why a samurai spear is that big. And that's the sort of stuff that we teach in the school and, where you do it and everything. But you can't practice that. So we struggle in that.
Are you guys teaching this stuff online right now as well?
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to be signing up for this very shortly here because it sounds badass, right up my alley.
So you get to pick your own course, basically. You come in, you see it, see what you like, and then you do your own courses, and you're like, oh, okay, I'm interested. Some people are clearly interested in the Zen Buddhism style of it. Some people are interested in the swords, or some people are interested in the military aspect of what we mainly do. How do you move from A to B? How do you move in squads? How do you get across rivers? So, for example, one of the teachings straight out of Sun Tzu is if you're going to cross a river with any amount of men, you have to do it in stages. First is your forward scouts. Second is your defensive line. Then you take the main commander across. Then you bring over the rear guard, and you have to have enough space to fit everyone in, because without doubt, you never attack when someone's crossing a river, you never just attack them straight away. You have to wait for half of the force, and then you attack them, and they run backwards and drown everyone in the middle. So this is why you have forward scouts, defense line. So that's why we have to do it online, because we don't have everyone together. We've not got a river, and you know what I mean. We don't have 100 guys, in a river. So it has to be online at the minute until I've got my own personal army, of course.
Yeah, well, don't we all? It's fascinating, man. I mean, literally, like that's how it's done today. So, like, it's just like Matt has said, right? Nothing new under the sun when it comes to warfare.
Yep.
I guess. Yeah.
And that's from Sun Tzu, which is over 2,000 years old.
Oh, did he take that from Sun Tzu?
Yeah, so a lot of the Chinese stuff stayed, you see. But then what they do is they start adding to the Japanese add to it and say, well, okay, we have archers here. We'll have sort of like people downstream to catch people and do this. And, and they even now have tripwire systems underneath the rivers. So you set up tripwire systems and even fake grass systems where you get grass, you get hundreds of people tying a string and a stone to grass and you throw it in the water so it looks like it's shallow and horses will just ride straight into it. Poof, dead. First line of dead.
Wow.
Yep.
I mean, I guess when all you got to do is focus on how to kill people, you come up with some pretty creative ways, which is
pretty much it, yeah. You're right as well. It's saying, going back to Tom Cruise's Last Samurai, he says, like, is it Billy Connolly, whoever it is, goes, they're still wearing armor and swords. And then Tom Cruise goes, yeah, but they've practiced war for 1,000 years. Yeah. And you're like, that's pretty true.
And so, and I'll let you go at some point here and I don't want to take up too much. It's later at night in your time.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
One of my last questions here is what I've always been fascinated with is how would the samurai have trained? I mean, how did they strike that balance between going hard and beating each other up, but not ruining each other for combat?
Yeah, this is a debate which I think everybody has a different opinion on. Is where's the line between just outright sparring, hitting, and it just damaging people, and your troops are no longer useful because everybody's breaking each other's arms, versus when does it get too off course that you're no longer physically a thingy? And I think a lot of them was more muscle memory drills, not outright sparring, but more we do set patterns, but we do them in a way that it's more realistic and we sort of push it. But then that turns into like what is traditional jiu-jitsu, where they just set pattern one. I'll give you an example. So the original scroll of Shinkagyu says it uses the word for weave in cloth. Like the weave, they say when the swords are finding their pattern of approach, you then change the sword and do X, Y, and Z, yeah? But that weaving of pattern to approach has now become, if you go to the same school in Japan with the modern guys, they approach each other bout and they go, and they go, what, you know what I mean? And it's like that represents we're trying to fight, we're trying to get a way in. And it's so stagnant now that they ritually do it 3 times. You're like, so that's no longer useful. But outright battering each other, because remember, not much of it is ground fighting. Right. So if you try to sword fight, even with wooden swords, you kill people. Musashi killed most of his men, or fought most of men with a wooden sword.
Yeah, that's right. And he did that to mess with their heads, basically, right?
It was like, to be honest, it's like, I don't know whether it was like, I don't want to outright kill you because if I use a real sword, I'll kill you, which at the same time they're going, oh, you bastards, and they're messing with their heads. But he did kill people with it as well. Right. So, you're like, I don't know which one it is. But the other question that comes up, everybody thinks Musashi killed every one of his people, but I don't think he did. You don't have to fight to the death. Some did, and sometimes he didn't. Okay. So, and there's the one time where he just carves an oar on a boat, doesn't it? He runs out and just smashes the guy over the noggin. And just splatters his skull, You're like, oh God. So the samurai can't train like that because you would very quickly run out of people.
Yeah. So one of the last questions, and we could talk all night, but one of the last questions I have for you here, Anthony, is your personal background with martial arts, because you obviously know what you're talking about. What have you studied?
Oh, believe it or not, Bujinkan.
Really?
Yeah. So I did. This is where it gets a bit tricky. So I did a video. If you've not seen it, right, please watch the video I did, which is Does Bujinkan Martial Arts Work? And I did a 20-minute video on does it or doesn't it work? And the result is somebody's a good fighter and they're already a hard lad, they'll make that work because they ditch the crap And they're like, and as I said, Hatsumi started freeing everything up, and he does think outside the box. But then it got ridiculous. I think what happened with Hatsumi is too many people said yes to him, and too many people were going, yes, sensei, that's hurting. And he got a bit, and then the next thing, I saw him throwing like 5 guys and tying him up. You're like, you would not be alive, mate, if that was real. Do you know what I mean? So I studied under the boot camp. I ended up being under a guy who's the northeast of England, who's really, the northeast in England is fully hard. It's where all the Vikings came, and they stayed there, and that was Viking culture. And they're the north, they'll just, you know what I mean? They put their hand in the chippy fat and so like breaking bars. And one of the guys there, it was a really hard guy in the 60s, 70s. He took up boot camp, and he was a bone doctor, and he learned how all the bones worked.
Okay.
So I spent years learning how the body works. But when BJJ and mixed martial arts came along, it really dented my confidence in it, because I did see most of it was crap. You know, it wasn't working. So I had to rethink again from scratch. And what was nice is he had a good foundation of body mechanics beneath it.
Okay.
So I am now in the process of saying, well, what actually did the samurai do? So the next step for me is samurai swordsmanship. And I don't know if you've seen it, if I did that about 3 weeks ago, I put up the Path of Masashi. I've challenged everyone in the Koryu Japanese world to a sword fight, right? I've challenged the world,
Awesome.
right?
Awesome.
And I was like, I've called it the Path of Masashi because I'm going to do 60 fights.
Oh.
And I've only done 1 so far, just 1. And I traveled to this really rough area. So I didn't realize, I thought it was a bit of a trap. I thought, shit, I've done the wrong thing. But it turns out it was dead nice. And to be honest, it was a good fight, but it was more, we were learning. So we have to stop after every hit, which is a bit annoying. We should have just carried on going. So it was a bit of a testing run. But what I had to do is I've gone back to the original scrolls, and I'm like, how can we make X work? It says do this. So for example, swords are held like that, yeah? There's a technique where you switch hands and come like this. And they don't realize you've switched hands. And what happens is they come that way, and because you turn and hit, you can't really get this online, but it hits the inside of their arm on the other side.
Okay.
So if I was doing it that way, I'd have to come round and strike them. But because I've switched hands, it's quickly bang, done.
Ah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, bang, cut their elbow, switch hands, cut the head. You know what I mean? So I'm trying to make them work in real time, and I've only got 1 done so far. So please follow that, guys, as I go along.
Yeah, and guys, listen, I mean, bar none, one of the best samurai and like actual historical ninjutsu channels on YouTube. Check it out, guys. Samurai and Ninja History. You can't go wrong. Now, Anthony, you've got a lot of awesome books. How can we get out there and grab some of them?
Best place is Amazon, absolutely. Basically, as much as I don't get as much money from Amazon, and people do ask me all the time, it's just nice because the publisher sees them going off the shelf out of Amazon, they're more than happy, and it creates that movement. And the more they sold on Amazon, the more they, given, Amazon promotes them more.
Okay.
So a good review on Amazon, some sales on Amazon would be wonderful.
And if they type in Anthony Cummins, Ninja, they'll be able to pull your books right up.
Best thing is just type in the Book of Ninja. It's dead easy to remember, the Book of Ninja, and you'll see it there, Antony Cummins, my little face in the bloody thing, and you see them all.
It is a charming face, bro.
Thank you, man. I need the haircut though. Since COVID, my missus cuts me hair, and she lives somewhere else. I've got weight.
Well, you got that rugged, almost Viking look going on now. So,
I did my DNA test, and it's 41% Swedish.
You're in good company, man. Same here, actually, Swedish and Irish. So, yeah.
No, wait, I'm 51% Irish.
I'm telling you, bro, there's got to be something about that combo, because like everyone I've talked to with our lineage is like freaking the same way. We're all just warriors. Yeah.
You just get on with it, don't you? Don't mess about.
Yeah, exactly. And much to the chagrin of my girlfriend, she's like, "You have no emotions." I'm like, "I got emotions. I just go for it, though."
Yeah. Oh, same as mine. My missus, she's like, "What do you think?" And you're like, "Well, crack on." She was like, "I'll leave you then. I'll see you." Yeah. And like 24 hours later, she's like, "Are you not bothered?"
Yeah.
Are you going or not?
Well, you're using the ninja mind secrets on her is what you're doing.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Where are you in the States, by the way? Where?
Right now I'm on the West Coast. I'm from the East Coast, New York originally.
Yeah.
And just for OPSEC, I don't really give out my exact location.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. No problem. No problem.
But
one day I'd like to come over to America and do some seminars. I've only been once to Michigan, but I've never been able to broach that too much yet.
I'll tell you what, man. We're just getting into the seminar game ourselves with our system, which is based on, I'm sure you know, Fairbairn's World War II combatives.
Yeah.
And we basically kept his lineage and just improved it a little bit. And so that's what we're doing. So I'd love to have you over in the States sometime, man. If you want to send Jen an email and get in touch, I mean, I think these COVID restrictions are finally coming to an end. So
it'll take a while because I'm not jabbed.
Well, I don't blame you on that, to be honest with you. Yeah. But I think they're going to relax that too at some point. So we should talk, man.
Yeah, definitely.
And then, guys, I do want to just quickly plug notori.co.uk. So that's where Anthony was talking about what he's teaching, and I'm going to be signing up. So hopefully some of you guys can sign up too, and we can make it kind of a club. So this I'm looking forward to this. Notori, NATORI.co.uk. And I'll also throw your links down in the description below. So
yeah, perfect.
Anthony, bro, it's been such a pleasure, man.
No problem. Thank you very much for having me.
I will. I'll be in touch with you. I certainly want to talk about some more things offline, but